take into account that more than half of the images that you see on this video actually have burnt, and we have lost so much of it.
And noting that those forests provide protection against the impacts of climate change. So forests have a huge benefit in addition to being as a host to huge biodiversity. They provide what we call ecosystem services. They're very important for protecting water resources, holding the soil in place when it rains, reducing the effects of flooding. So the aim of the initiative is to reduce disaster risks and to protect and restore critical ecosystems in the Mediterranean. 2 years ago, we published a global report on extreme fires. It's called Spreading Like Wildfire, and it pulled together all of the most recent science on wildfire risks and the linkages with climate change. It was authored by 60 scientists, so it's a really global report looking at the relationship between climate change and the rising risks of extreme wildfires.
Lightning is the only natural way for wildfire to be ignited. All of the other ways are actually down to humans. We are pretty much seeing every single fire exhibit extreme fire behavior after the 15-minute mark. So this is something that has fundamentally changed the way that we are approaching fire and the effect that we can have in fighting wildfire. So this has actually developed into a truly dangerous enemy, and it's global. It's not just in this country. You obviously know that it's happening in the US, but it's happening everywhere. You know, just how extreme a fire can get is depicted in this video. We have a very good eyewitness account of what an extreme fire, what an extreme inferno is. We call this a firestorm, and there's very little anyone can do to stop it. This is nature at its most powerful. You have to understand, these are 20, 30-meter tall flames. They cannot be doused off. They cannot be extinguished. There's as many planes as you may have, you cannot fight this fire.
And one of the big overarching recommendations was that we need to spend pay much more attention to prevention, to managing the forests that we have, which are a critical resource for climate resilience and biodiversity. And we need to get better at managing the conditions that lead to extreme fires, and also get better at restoring areas that have been affected by fires. So at the moment, a lot of government attention is focused on the civil protection side, the firefighting, which is incredibly important. We don't want to reduce that, but we want to increase the focus on managing forests, reducing the amount of dangerous fuel in forests.
These are things that we probably needed to start doing 20 years ago. So we're really lagging behind. We're still here fighting, but realistically, I will tell you that I personally believe that we are fighting a losing war. We also turned our back to fundamental practices that used to take place in the forests in the past. And thinking about the fact that, you know, people alienated themselves from the natural environment, and a lot of the professions that were taking place inside the forests have actually now pretty much died away. This led to a huge accumulation of fuel in the forests. When you have a lot of fuel, you have very powerful, very extreme fire behavior. So a combination of years and years, I should say decades, of suppression, disregarding the beneficial aspect of wildfire, if effectively turned what could have been something beneficial to the ecosystem as well as to us into a monster.
the impacts of fires that we're seeing in the Mediterranean Basin, across the basin. Huge loss of life, as I think you all know. In 2021, 100 people were killed and 620 hectares of land were burnt in the Mediterranean.
It's actually starting to hit home for a lot of people with what's been happening in the last few years, but there's still people that believe that this doesn't really directly affect them. Well, the answer is that it does, and it does to a very large extent. It can affect your home, your property. It can affect your car. It can affect your whole neighborhood. It can affect your life and the life of your loved ones. But there's also an aspect that a lot of people don't realize. It affects everybody, whether they are directly affected by fire or indirectly.
One of the things that we noticed when we're pulling together this UN coalition is that we're all proposing the same sets of policies. We all say, looking at the science and looking at the practice, that we need to devote more attention to managing forests to prevent fires from spreading so quickly, and that requires different approaches to managing, reducing fuel through different mechanisms and preparing better so that fires don't spread so quickly. We know that once the fires have reached a certain intensity, no matter how many fire planes you have, it's very difficult to control them until the weather changes. So we need to get better at controlling them, understanding when they're going to break out, but also reducing the amount of fuel in the forest so that we're not put in such high risk when the fires inevitably do break out.
First of all, what we need to realize is that this is going to affect us sooner or later. It's not a matter of if you're going to get affected by wildfire. It's a matter of when you're going to get affected by a wildfire. And what you can do about it is to start planning. The number one thing that you need to have in mind is getting to know your area well. To plan and think quite well how you're going to react to the situation of a wildfire. Mind you, it's very important to realize that, a road that may be available to you today will not be available during a wildfire. If you're going to be prepared for something like this, you would want to have alternatives. So, get out there and look for these before it happens, because when it happens, it's probably going to be too late. Prepare a go bag with a few important items, like things like your charger, some cash, a few photographs that you're really attached to. It can mean a lot. So, yes, there are things that we can do, and it all starts with actually changing the course of our planet and changing our lifestyle and our attitude towards our planet. Now, a lot of people quite often wonder whether we can actually do something about this or whether this is much larger than us. And I always tend to say that, we messed things up in the course of the planet to begin with. So, yes, we can probably undo our own mess. Please do try to evacuate early. If you're going to leave, you want to do it early. You don't want to be caught on the road in your vehicle, in your car, by a wildfire. 26 people burned in 2007 trying to flee a fire near Zaharo in the prefecture of Ilia. By all means, stay put. If you can see flames, pick a location that you're going to be safe and stay put. If you go out on the road, there are much more chances of you not surviving. Do not drive into flames. Do not drive into smoke. You're likely to cause an accident, and an accident in these situations is going to mean the difference between living to tell the tale and actually not being there at all. Carry a fire extinguisher. It's mandatory in this country to carry a fire extinguisher in your car, and a lot of people don't. We've actually had cases where whole mountains burned because of a car just catching fire. So do carry a fire extinguisher with you, please. be active as well when it comes to doing something about this. Volunteer. There are a lot of teams everywhere where you might live around the country. There are volunteer teams. You don't have to become a firefighter. You can be a first protection volunteer. You can help with preventative measures. You can help with fire watches and things like that.
The key message is that there's a lot of scientific consensus about how we need to address these risks. There are huge challenges translating that into policy. But we have, I think, a lot of political will to make this work better at a governmental level, but also at a regional level. And we're now beginning to put the pieces in place to try and provide additional support to reduce those risks. I'll stop there. Thanks very much.